Thank you very much, Madam Chairwoman. It's great to join you at our first subcommittee hearing together, and I look forward to working across the aisle to oversee and strengthen our capitalist economy. Today, we begin our work by discussing inflation. My Republican friends titled this hearing, Inflation, a Preventable Crisis. So I think our first task is to dig into what they think was preventable. Let's rule a few things out. We all know that Congress couldn't have prevented a once-in-a-century pandemic or Putin's illegal war in Ukraine. We all know Congress couldn't have prevented the strain on our supply chains when people started trading consumption for services, for consumption of services for goods during COVID. And we all know Congress couldn't have immediately fixed our strained supply chains to reduce inflation. After all, it took decades for Washington to crack our supply chains by underinvesting in infrastructure, ignoring price gouging monopolies, and letting corporations offshore manufacturing. So we've ruled out Congress preventing the economic shocks and the resulting effects that led to inflation. But still, our Republican friends are suggesting that something about inflation was a choice. Well, I suppose it was a choice to help people suffering the economic impacts of COVID. But to me, that help wasn't really a choice, it was a necessity. But it seems like today's hearing could turn into a forum to blame American fiscal policy for the global phenomenon of inflation. If American fiscal policy created inflation as a crisis that's being felt in countries across the globe, then American fiscal policy should equally be able to solve that crisis. So what policies do Republicans think will solve global inflation? Is it deep cuts to social programs like Social Security and Medicare that would devastate our seniors and working families? Or maybe it's just the Rein In Act, which Republicans passed last week, which requires the president to consider the inflationary impact of executive orders. The problem is the Rein In Act commissions a report. It's not a comprehensive look at the costs and benefits of executive orders. Does that really help us make more informed fiscal decisions, or is it just designed to discourage executive orders? Either way, the Rein In Act still just commissions reports. It takes no real action. If that was House Republicans' secret plan to fight inflation, it's going to be a long 2 years for American families. Either Republicans don't have a plan to address inflation while making life better for families, or they're too afraid to admit that their plan is to take away deeply popular and needed programs from the American people. Let's contrast that with what Democrats have been up to. We passed the Inflation Reduction Act, which would cap the price of insulin for seniors, allow Medicare to negotiate drug prices, lower the cost of health insurance, and lower the cost of renewable energy, all while reining in inflation by paying down the national debt. We passed the bipartisan infrastructure law to invest billions in our ports and airports to stop the supply chain bottlenecks that have spiked prices during the pandemic. We passed the CHIPS for America Act that will bring back domestic manufacturing that Washington let move overseas for decades, injecting competition and resiliency into our markets that lowers prices. And perhaps most importantly, we've had a president who has taken executive action to break up monopolies, chipping away at the power big corporations have enjoyed to gouge huge profit margins and raise prices on consumers. These are the kinds of actions that contain inflation, make life better for families, and shore up our economic resiliency. Today, I'm calling on House Republicans to please put forward your own plan to fight inflation that is at least as detailed as the Inflation Reduction Act. It's time the American people see where you stand, not see you grandstand. I yield back.